The Curse of the Last Stall. Red or blue toilet paper, and you can't escape. It all began with a rumor, a wild tale whispered between shivers and laughter. They said that in the bathroom of the old pier, the last stall held a mysterious power. Pull the red toilet paper, and you wouldn't come back. Choose the blue, and you might just see a glimpse of the dark truth that lay beneath the waves. Clara had rolled her eyes at those stories, but the disappearances had everyone on edge. One by one, people went missing. Fishermen, tourists, even a couple of local kids, and fear danced in the salty breeze of their small coastal town. Clara stood outside the pier's restroom, her heart thumping like a drum. The air around her felt thick, and the ghostly whispers seemed to brush against her skin. What if there was something to the legend? What if the truth was more sinister than they could ever fathom? She thought about her father's secret environmental project. Dredging up old fears and fear. We need to face this. The smell of old wood and mildew twisted around them as they approached. The whispers grew louder, almost tangible. Clara reached for the roll. Red or blue? Her hands trembled, uncertainty clawing at her stomach. Just as she reached for the blue, a loud bang echoed from the stall. The door swung open with a force that shocked them both. Clara gasped, and Leo jumped back, their hearts racing. What happened next felt like a shift in the very air. A rush of cold water surged against her ankles, as if the ocean itself reached out, dragging her closer to a hidden truth. She stumbled, caught between her town's dark history and her family's secret now rising to the surface like flotsam. And outside, a shadow loomed. The fishing tycoon, always lurking, protecting interests more powerful than they could imagine. Clara's eye caught the glint of his watchful gaze through cracked glass. This was more than just a bathroom legend. It tied to her father, the town. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. As the cold water swirled around Clara's ankles, a dizzying rush of emotions consumed her. Her heart raced in a chaotic rhythm, each beat sending shockwaves of anxiety coursing through her. The whispers intensified, wrapping around her like a shroud, creating a tightness in her chest that felt as real as the ocean itself. Leo stepped back, his eyes wide with fear and disbelief. Suddenly, from the depths of the rippling mystery that engulfed them, a figure emerged. A small light flickered, casting eerie shadows on the damp walls. Clara squinted, trying to make sense of the apparition, when it became clear. It was a girl, soaked and ghostly pale, with long hair clinging to her face. Clara's breath caught in her throat. "Help me," the girl rasped, her voice barely above a whisper, yet it carried the weight of 100 desperate souls. Clara felt a tug at her heart. A fierce want to leap forward, to save her. But the red or the blue? Suddenly the stall door creaked open wider, as if the bathroom itself was urging them deeper into the abyss. A throbbing energy pulsed in the air, pushing against them like a wave about to crash. "What do you mean? They won't let us leave?" Clara's voice trembled. The girl shook her head, and for a moment she looked almost relieved, as if someone had finally acknowledged her plight. The whispers grew louder, and Clara felt them prickling her skin, urging her to listen. "Your father knows," the girl said, a flicker of recognition in her eye. "He's not who you think he is. He's part of it. That last word slashed through Clara like a hot knife. What do you mean? She stepped backward, her heart pounding with betrayal, fear, and confusion. What could her father possibly have to do with this? He had always been her rock, the champion of a clean environment, the protector of the ocean. Could he be mixed up in something dark? Your father isn't Jay. Townsfolk had gathered. Clara, Leo, are you in there? The urgency in their voices sent a spike of fear crashing through her. What if they're coming to find us? The girl whispered, looking terrified. What if they know? You can't let them take you too. Clara's eyes darted back to Leo, whose gaze mirrored her fear. Then the shadows began to form shapes, emerging, crowding the narrow bathroom with dark figures. Clara could see the outline of the fishing tycoon she had always known from town, his face twisted into something dark and menacing. He wasn't just a businessman, he was involved. She felt a rush of bile rise in her throat as she grappled with this stunning realization. "Dad!" Clara shouted, panic gripping her as the figure drew closer. "Stop this!" she pleaded, realization dawning upon her. Her father was lying to her. He was not innocent. But the man before her wasn't her dad. It was a facade, a mask he wore. "You shouldn't have come here, Clara." The fig. "What do you mean?" The shadows around them began to swirl, encircling Clara, Leo, and the girl. "You are part of this. The ocean requires a price," he said, his voice echoing as if the walls themselves were speaking. The girl's grip tightened on Clara's arm, her eyes wide with terror. "You have to choose," she yelled again. But clarity was gone, drowned in a flood of confusion. What was the truth? Clara felt the ground below her give way, and a cold rush of uncertainty gripped her heart. Suddenly, the bathroom exploded in chaos. The door burst open, and a surge of townsfolk flooded in. Clara barely recognized their faces. Panic was real, and it wrapped around her like a vice. They were drawn in, the energy palpable, pushing her toward an unknown fate. And then she saw it. A familiar flash of red and blue flicking like a flag in the storm. Somehow more than just toilet paper. It was a symbol of choice, of life or death decisions. But in that moment, Clara felt everything else. Clara stood frozen, feet glued to the ground as layers of deception peeled away, plunging her into confusion and fear. "Choose!" the girl screamed, and in that moment, Clara felt the weight of her world balance on the cusp of an unfathomable truth. But before she could act, the darkness enveloped them all. And just like that, reality itself shattered around her, ripping apart everything she thought she knew. Was the ocean saving her, or was it claiming her? The unraveling had begun. As the darkness crashed around them, Clara felt her heart race faster, pounding like a drum stuck in a frantic rhythm. Shadows swallowed the room, swirling like a storm ready to break, compressing every breath. "What is happening?" she thought, her mind spiraling into chaos. The girl's scared face was all she could see, her eyes wide and desperate. But then, the floor beneath them lurched violently, sending a jolt through their bodies. Leo stumbled backward, nearly colliding with a wall. "Clara!" No, it didn't burst. It crashed, like an explosion that sent splinters scattering across the floor. A figure staggered in, silhouetted against the light. A man. But Clara didn't recognize him, not at first. The shadows folded, then peeled back, revealing a familiar face. "Dad?" Clara breathed, her voice trembling, uncertainty flooding through her veins. But before she could process anything further, a flash of movement was all she caught. Leo lunged forward, his face twisted in shock. "Don't! Get back!" "No!" Clara's heart sank. "Stay!" In the chaos, she barely saw their father rush forward, shadows twisting in his wake. "Clara, I'm here to help." His voice boomed like thunder, yet it felt hollow, swirling with tension that rang false. "Help us?" she repeated, incredulity rising in her chest. "You've been hiding all this?" His dark eyes shifted, glinting like stones, unreadable. "We don't have time to explain. We must leave right now." As if on cue, the whisperin', they huddled together as their father stepped forward, visibly shaking, yet determined. "I'll hold them off," he shouted, and before they could react, he threw his arms wide, the shadows swirling around him like a living cloak. "Dad, wait!" Clara cried out, desperation igniting every nerve in her body. But it was too late. He was already enveloped, swallowed whole by the very darkness he had seemed to command. "Clara!" Leo shouted, his voice breaking through panic with urgency. "We can't stay here!" But just then, the girl cried out, "You have to listen! We need to choose quickly!" Her eyes darted around, filled with a fear so deep it cut through Clara's confusion. "Choose what?" Clara asked, bewildered. "What does it even matter?" Suddenly, a snarl echoed throughout the altered room, an echo of something primal deep within the abyss. The shadows solidified, revealing grotesque shapes, their faces twisted with fury and a hunger Clara couldn't understand. "The girl step," Leo was shouting now. "Don't listen to her! We need to go!" Clara was torn between her father's face, now a twisted shadow in her mind, and the girl's desperate plea. "Choose!" And just like that, everything around them erupted. The darkness thrust forward, the shadows woven into a fabric of terror wrapped tightly around Clara. The air crackled, and from the chaos, an aching truth pierced her thoughts. "Leo," she gasped, suddenly understanding. "He's the curse. He's the reason." But before she could finish her thought, the shadows exploded with an ear-splitting roar, a cacophony of whispers crescendoing into screams, crashing over them like angry waves. With a flash, Clara turned toward the girl, still holding her arm with a grip so tight it felt like they were bound together in some unseen tether. "I need to know. What do I choose?" But the girl's expression shifted. She looked more pained than afraid, as she whispered, "You have to remember." Suddenly, the world around, "You see?" he drawled, his voice smooth yet dripping with malice. "You are destined to understand." "Understand what?" Clara nearly shouted, the weight of 1,000 questions pooling in her chest. The girl reappeared, but this time she looked calm, as if freed from the tension that had defined her moments before. "The choice isn't just red or blue," she said, her tone steady, even as the storm raged around them. "It's about who you really are, who we are." Clara faltered. "What do you mean?" "Your father has orchestrated this. We are all connected. The ocean requires balance, and you, Clara, you are the one who must restore it." Suddenly, Clara's world fell apart again. Memories crashed in, snapshots of laughter with her father, long talks about their love for the ocean. The work he claimed was protecting it. The truth began to dawn on her, slowly turning over like a dark tide rising within her. "You're lying," Clara shouted defiantly, though she felt her heart pound. She turned to him, confusion etched across her features, just as a blinding light erupted from the ocean, illuminating them against the gathering storm. The waves seemed alive, crashing and swirling toward them with an urgency she couldn't grasp. "Leo," she whispered, feeling the warmth of his body next to her battling the cold reality of their situation. "What are we?" But it happened too fast. There was a massive surge, and before they could react, a wave that didn't feel like water, but like pure energy, crashed into them, enveloping them in a blinding light. "Clara!" Leo yelled, as they were swept away, caught in a current of luminescence and confusion. And in that moment, she understood. It hadn't been about choosing red or blue. It had been about realizing who she really was, who they all were. But just as the light began to fade, Clara sensed something shift within her. Was it power? The truth? Or the final blow of betrayal? And then everything went black. They were free, but the chaos in the air was palpable. Something dangerous lingered, lurking just out of sight. "Clara! Leo!" The frantic voices of townsfolk pulled them back to the present. Friends and neighbors crowded around, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright fear. Her heart raced. "What just happened?" she whispered, but nobody seemed to know. Then she noticed it. A string of dark figures trailing behind her father. Clara's stomach knotted. The shadows peeled away from the crowd, revealing him in the light. He moved forward, but his expression was not the worn smile she remembered. It was cold, stern, a mask of authority overlaid with something darker. "Dad," Clara's voice trembled. A surge of protectiveness for Leo rushed through her, but now it was mingled with confusion. What did they just get pulled away from? "Stay back!" he thundered, raising a hand to keep the townsfolk at bay. The shadows shifted around him, like a storm cloud, restless. His tone was sharp, cutting through the noise. "There are things you don't know, things that should never be uncovered." Then the girl, the ghostly figure that had pulled her from the darkness, appeared again. "You can't hide the truth, not from her." Her voice rang out fierce and determined. She moved closer to Clara. "You have to see it. Stop him before it's too late." At that moment, the very sky darkened, a shadow cast over the town. The ocean roared, waves crashing, as if echoing Clara's confusion and dread. "No!" Clara felt a pull inside her, something snapping into place. "You're lying!" She pointed at the girl, feeling anger surfacing against the fear. "You're trying to scare me!" But the girl shook her head, her expression unwavering. "Not scare you, show you. You must wake up." And just like that, a realization washed over Clara, like a tidal wave crashing down. She began to piece together the thread of truth that had been tangled in lies. You're no Clara," Leo hissed, urgency bleeding into his voice. "What are you doing? Your father has controlled this town for years, for his own ends." The girl's voice rang out, unwavering. "And your power, it's what he's been afraid of. You have the strength to stop him." Clara's heart raced, fear and anger colliding as she flicked her gaze to her father. "You have to tell me the truth," she shouted, daring him with her eyes. "Who are you?" The crowds began to murmur, a wave of tension rippling through the gathered townsfolk. Clara could hear their whispers, questions swirling in the air, thick with worry. But her father merely narrowed his gaze, defiance carving lines on his face. "You can't understand what you're about to unleash," he growled. But Clara saw the crack in his facade. The shadow hanging around him flickered, revealing that he was fading, just a little. Maybe it's you who doesn't understand, she yelled back, heat rising within her. You think hiding sec of. You were meant for more than this. Trust yourself. Clara took a breath, steadied her resolve. I don't want your secrets, Dad. I want the truth. Who are you, really? His face twisted, a fleeting glimpse of vulnerability surfacing before anger slapped it back down. I've protected you, Clara. This is for your own good. But there was an edge to his voice now, something Clara had never heard before. A crack that let a shadow of doubt slip through. Protecting me? She scoffed, light anger flickering alive. You've kept me in the dark. With that, everything seemed to spark and break. The air shifted, a sudden jolt racing through the crowd. People tensed, the weight of revelation thickening the very atmosphere around them. But then, a keening wail shattered through the tension. The sound sliced through the chaos, causing everyone to freeze. From the depths of the pier, a figure emerged, shrouded in the depths of the gathering darkness. Their clothes were tattered, and then it happened. A face broke through the shadows, one Clara knew too well. Mom? It was her mother. But something was wrong. Oh, so wrong. Her mother's eyes glowed with a luminescence that chilled Clara to her core, and her features twisted into something unrecognizable. Clara, her mother spoke, her voice echoing with dissonance. Your father, he didn't tell you everything. Clara felt the world tilt. Confusion shredded her thoughts. No, you can't be. I'm so much more than what he made me, her mother continued, her gaze piercing through Clara's defenses. You were meant to know the truth, my love, the truth that binds us. Clara's pulse quickened. You're not what you thought, her mother interrupted, stepping even closer. I was taken years ago, caught up in the very curse your father has woven over this town. But I'm back now. The crowd erupted in chaos, some backing away, others crossing themselves as if warding off evil. Mom, I don't understand. The air hummed with tension. Clara's heart sank. Was this even possible? No, you can't mean this. But the truth erupted from her mother's lips with a force that shattered Clara's perspective. You've inherited the power to tip the scales, to choose the fate of this town, but only if you reject your father's hold over you. Without warning, Clara's father roared, stepping forward to shield Clara from her mother's gaze. You're lying. You've twisted her mind. A shadow's is only protection, flickered uncertainly, reluctant now. The night surged with magic and chaos, emotions sparking and colliding as Clara felt her world thrust upside down. No, you're the liar. You've lied to all of us. And with that declaration hanging in the air, Clara felt a burst of courage swell within her. She understood. Her choice wasn't only about red or blue. It was about standing in her own light, breaking free from the chains that hadn't belonged to her in the first place. But then, the power surging within her took form, beckoning to shape the truth, a truth that would change everything. But the choice hung heavy in the air, echoing with uncertainty. What would she sacrifice to break the chains? What would the ocean demand in return? And at that moment, as the waves crashed violently against the pier, Clara felt the weight of the world settle upon her shoulders. The truth was darker than she'd ever dared to imagine, and the secrets entwined in their hearts were things she might not escape. The storm was only beginning. The storm was only beginning. Clara could hear the waves crashing against the pier, like they were trying to break free from the grip of the darkness. Shadows danced along the wooden planks, flickering in the dim light. It felt as though the very world around her was holding its breath. Leo stood by her side, eyes wide, his body tense with uncertainty. And for a moment, she felt so small, like a child lost at sea. "Clara!" he shouted, "This can't be real. You can't be, not like this." But the truth was dripping down around her, and she could feel it, the weight of everything shifting. "Listen to your mother," her father's voice boomed, rising above the sound of the waves. But there was panic behind his facade, a crack in the mask of authority he wore. "She doesn't want you to know." The crowd was watching, holding its breath, faces twisted in confusion and disbelief, a living testament to the tension in the air. Clara felt their eyes on her, a mix of fear and concern washing over the gathered townspeople. Then it happened. In a flash, a ripple ran through the crowd, a collective gasp echoing as shadows writhed around her father. The very night seemed to shift, twisting and folding like a piece of paper crumbling under pressure. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the far end of the pier. Clara spun around just in time to see a wave, a monstrous wall of dark water, rolling toward them like an avalanche. What stole her breath was the sight before her. The girl stood before them, but now she wasn't just a lost soul. She was glowing. It radiated from her, resplendent in a light that illuminated everything around her. "It's time to choose, Clara." Her voice was calm yet insistent, echoing in the cavernous room. Clara's heart threatened to burst from her chest. "Choose? Choose what?" Confusion wrapped around her words. "Choose your path." But as she looked around, everything began to warp again. The ground trembled beneath her feet, shifting like waves crashing together. Shadows surged into tall figures, and all Clara could see were faces, angry, moaning, whispering accusations, and desperate cries curling through the damp air. The room turned black, revealing the haunting faces of those who had vanished. Fishermen, tourists, they had all come to warn her. And then it hit her, like a punch to the gut. "Mom!" Clara shrieked, her eyes darting back to the figure of her mother. "You didn't know the risks." His tone was clipped, the shadows dancing behind him like angry creatures demanding release. "What risks?" Clara shouted, anger fueling her words. "You've kept the truth from me this whole time. What are you afraid of?" The shadows behind her father whispered, alive with sinister secrets. The whispers became a roar, drowning out her thoughts. "You can't trust her. She doesn't understand." Clara stumbled back, feeling the weight of betrayal hanging heavy. "I don't trust either of you." Suddenly, the girl stepped closer, her energy pulsating with urgency, a light in the chaos. "Clara, you must understand. Your mother wasn't just taken. She was part of something bigger, something involving you too. Both of your parents are intertwined with this curse. But you have the power to break it." "What do you mean?" Clara's voice shook, confusion choking her. "Break what? You mean everything they've built? Everything they've lied to us about?" "Stop!" Clara screamed, feeling helpless. In that moment, everything stood still. Then it happened. The shadow demon-like figure of her father suddenly halted, eyes wide, shock plastering his features. "Clara!" he gasped, reaching toward her, a plea in his voice. But it was too late. The figure lunged. There was a flash of blinding light. Time slowed, and Clara's world twisted in the blink of an eye. A resounding crack boomed through the air, and the world exploded around her. Heavy chaos washed through Clara like an avalanche, consuming her completely. But then, the chaos morphed, revealing their surroundings anew. They were back again, but they stood now in a vast open field, under a bruised sky heavy with storm clouds. Feet sank into the wet grass, and the chill of the night filled her lungs. But this time, she wasn't alone. "Clara!" Leo gasped, his breath coming in quick bursts as he surveyed the scene around them. Confusion etched on his face. What just happened? The ground erupted with energy, the shadows blurring together until everything morphed into one. And from that swirling mass, the girl's voice rang out again, piercing the zephyr with its urgency. "They're not lost, Clara. They're tied to you. They've always been a part of this, just like you. You have to see it." "See what?" Clara shouted back, heart racing, the trail mixing with panic. "What do you mean?" But then, like a flash of lightning in the storm, everything changed once again. A thunderous crash echoed across the field, like a drum announcing an omen, and all at once, the shadows tilted back, pulling away from the ground. Clara gasped, choking on the rush of horror that enveloped her. The figures pulled back, revealing a gigantic altar rising from the earth, dark and looming. There, at its center, stood a glowing sphere, swirling with shades of blue and red, an orb pulsing like a heartbeat, filled with cosmic secrets waiting to be unleashed. "What is that?" Her parents appeared, but this time they seemed different. More vulnerable, more raw, as if stripped of their facades. "Don't do it, Clara," her father shouted, desperation lacing his voice. "You don't understand what you'll unleash." "Mom, you love me, don't you?" Clara demanded, stepping toward the altar, her voice firm. "You wouldn't let me be a part of this if you didn't." But just as Clara's heart swelled with hope, something shifted. A tremor ran through the earth, and pieces of the sky tore open, unleashing a fiery glow. In that blinding light, Clara saw it, the truth hidden beneath layers of deception. A vision flooded her mind, bloodlines entangled with curses, families tangled in lies, loss that echoed louder than waves against the shore. Her heart filled with something new, fear intertwined with rage. Then, the ground beneath them cracked wide open. Clara stumbled, gripping the altar for support, heart racing. The girl, now frantic, shouted, "You must decide!" But the shadows loomed closer. Shadows taking form, revealing familiar faces. They were the people she thought she had lost. They surged forward, crying out, voices melding into an anguished chorus. "Clara! Free us! Break the curse!" In that split second, Clara stood on the edge of something monumental and terrifying. The pulse of the orb echoed through her, shaking her to her core. She could feel power rising within her, boiling over, seeping into the air. As chaos enveloped her and shadows pressed against her, Clara's heart raced faster. She was running out of time. She had to make a choice. Would it be the truth, the curse, or would they all be lost to the shadows? But just as she opened her mouth to speak, everything shattered once more, and a single, chilling voice cut through the chaos, one she hadn't expected. "Clara, you've chosen wrong." Her father's shadowy figure loomed larger than life, and in that moment, It struck her, a terrifying realization that this ba, a loud crack, shattered the silence, louder than the roar of the ocean. The ground shook violently beneath them. Clara stumbled, clutching Leo's arm, trying to steady herself as panic surged through the crowd. The altar trembled, the orb pulsating violently, sending waves of energy rippling outward. "Clara, hold on!" Leo shouted over the cacophony, but the shadows loomed larger, pressing in on all sides. "Make a choice," the girl urged again, her glowing presence flickering like a candle caught in the wind. But Clara's heart raced, uncertainty washing over her with every passing second. She looked at her mother, the desperate plea in her eyes cutting deep. Then it hit, like a lightning bolt through the air, a blinding flash that scattered the crowd, throwing them backward. Clara shielded her eyes, squinting against the brightness. The shadows screamed and recoiled, as if something monumental was breaking free. And that's when Clara saw it. From the center of the orb, something. "The curse lives in your blood, Clara." The voice resonated, echoing from the orb. It was both Simon and something much darker. "You're tied to everything here, more than you can possibly understand." "Simon, what are you saying?" She stumbled backward, confusion spinning her thoughts. You were taken." But he continued, undeterred. "I was always here. Your father sought to control it, all of it, but he failed. You see, Clara, it has never been just about him. You're the key." The crowd murmured, voices rising in panic, faces painted with shock. Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Her father, still standing among the shadows, snarled, "No, that's not true. Clara is my daughter. She belongs to me." The desperation in his voice cut through the chaos, raw and painful. But Simon laughed, a chilling sound. "Belongs to you? She's a part of this realm and the very essence of the ocean that you've manipulated." Clara shouted, feeling tears sting her eyes. "You can't twist this. You were my best friend." But then Clara's heart dropped as she saw a flicker of recognition in Simon's eyes, a melding of emotions that ignited old memories. "I wanted to protect you, Clara. Do you think living as a shadow was easy? No one would help me. Remember the last time we touched the ocean? The bond we made? It's part of what happened to me." "Stop!" Clara screamed, staggering back. The shadows roared, and Clara could feel the pressure building, ready to explode. "Make your choice, Clara," the girl yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. But it was too late for choices. The crowd surged forward, a wave of panic washing over them all. And then a sudden crack of thunder rang out, louder than before, and Clara felt the entire world nearly crack in half. The orb blazed, and for a moment, time stopped. A wave of energy erupted, sending the townsfolk flying backward. Clara felt. But Clara's focus was hardening on Simon. "You made a choice too. You chose darkness over light." The hurt bled into her words. "You can't have me." "No choice," Simon screamed back, a hint of desperation slipping into his tone. "We're tied together, always have been. Don't you see? The ocean protects its own. We belong to it." Clara shook her head, nausea twisting her stomach. Inside her, something was shifting. Claws of doubt grappling with certainties she'd held dear. "You don't belong to this darkness. We don't." Suddenly, the shadows surged forward, gliding toward Clara and Leo like a dark tide. She could feel Simon pulling back, a glimpse of the boy she had loved, flickering in the depths of the chaos. But before Clara could say anything more, everything exploded around them. The orb cracked open, a blinding light bursting free, overtaking the room. Someone screamed. "Clara!" Leo shouted, panic gripping his voice. And from the blinding light, she caught sight of. And in that moment, everything fell away. The form of Simon dissipated, replaced by swirling shadows. Clara felt her heart pound furiously, the realization dawning on her in cruel clarity. The truth was deeper, more sinister than she had ever imagined. Her family, the very blood that coursed through her veins, was intertwined with the curse. The ocean was both protector and prison, and her father had been its warden, lying to her all along. He attempted to control it, chaining Clara with the weight of her lineage. But now it was lying before her, broken and raw, pleading for liberation. And then Clara felt it, a surge of connection, light bursting within her, igniting her core. It was pure, and it spoke to her of hope. But her father stepped forward, desperate eyes locking onto hers. "You have to understand, it's not just about you, Clara." And just like that, she felt the rush of fury course through her, igniting her insides like fire. "Then what about Simon? What have I left?" The storm was only just beginning. Clara felt herself pulled deeper into the dark void, waves of fear crashing over her. She was alone in this place, surrounded by nothing but silence. The echoes of the past danced in her mind, voices familiar and strange, swirling into a haunting cacophony. Had she made the right choice? Was this choice even hers to make? The air thickened, palpable with questions unanswered. It hung around her like fog, pressing against her skin. She could almost hear the ocean whispering from a distance. Could it really be sending messages to her? The shadows pulsed, threatening to close in. Clara could feel them dancing at the edge, jostling and swirling, waiting. But then a light flickered. Clara squinted, straining to see through the abyss. The light grew larger, piercing through the dark like a spear. She felt warmth seep through her, a tingling sensation igniting her spirit. Was this hope? Just as quickly as the light appeared, it blossomed into. She sat up, blinking against the bright light that flooded the landscape. Trees swayed around her, their leaves whispering secrets. But something was wrong. The air stank. Clara's stomach churned. The ground was damp, slick with something dark. She looked down, and her heart dropped. It was blood. "Oh no," she whispered. "What happened?" Clara staggered to her feet, scanning the environment. She was outside now, next to what remained of the pier. The town loomed further down, but it was distorted, shattered. What once was her childhood playground was now nothing but ruins. The buildings were crumbling, debris scattered about like forgotten memories. "Leo," she called, desperation clawing at her throat. "Where are you?" Silence hung heavy around her. Clara felt a sickening sense of dread creeping in, wrapping around her heart like chains. She stumbled forward, breathless, seeking any sign of Leo, the comforting warmth of their shared history. Then she saw them. Shapes. They were all there, townsfolk she knew, friends and family, all gathered. And at the center was Leo. He was shaking. His face was pale, panic woven into the lines of his expression. Clara's heart sank. "Leo!" she shouted again. But the crowd turned, and their faces morphed. Fear turned into anger. "Clara!" they shouted in unison, but it didn't feel right. It felt like an accusation. "Clara, you don't understand," Leo cried, pushing through the mass of people. But it wasn't fear that clung to him. It was betrayal. Clara felt her knees buckle, the ground seeming to rise up beneath her. "What's happening?" But before he could answer, her father appeared at the edge of the crowd. His face twisted, a mask of anger mixed with fear. You brought this upon us." "Me?" Clara's voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" "You broke the seal. You opened the portal." His voice echoed, rising over the murmurs of the townsfolk. "The ocean demanded a price, and you paid it." "No," Clara gasped, shaking her head. "I didn't know. I thought I could save everyone." The crowd began to close in. Shadows lengthened, twisting around them, pulling Clara toward the darkness she had tried to escape. Whispers filled the air, accusations flying like arrows. "You are the curse. You are the darkness." "Stop!" Leo shouted, stepping protectively in front of her. "You don't know what you're saying." But the crowd erupted. Clara felt her breath quickening. She could see their faces, fear, distrust, and rage carved into their features. "Clara, you are the reason we've been suffering." No, that's not true." Panic surged through her. But as she pleaded, waves of realization crashed over Clara. She had always felt it, hadn't she? The whispers at night, the shadows lurking behind her. There was power, more power than she ever realized. The girl's plea rang in her mind. You have the strength to break it. And suddenly, everything shifted again. The shadows around her grew restless, swirling faster, tightening their grip. Clara closed her eyes, drawing strength from somewhere deep inside. She felt the orb's energy pulsing brightly within her, and she took a deep breath, grounding herself. "Stop!" Clara shouted, her voice breaking through the chaos. "I can prove it. I can show you I'm not your enemy." But just then, the ground beneath her shifted. Clara stumbled as a shadow ripped through the earth, opening a fissure. A monstrous roar erupted from within. The villagers screamed, fear flooding the air. "Clara, get back!" Leo shouted, but she stood frozen, captivated by the abyss opening before her. Then, as the shadows flowed like water, something emerged, a figure, cloaked in darkness. But as it stepped into the light, Clara's breath caught in her throat. A familiar face, a face she thought she'd never. "You don't have to do this." But he smiled, a twisted grin that sent chills up her spine. "It's too late. You've unleashed something you can't control. The ocean knows your true self." Clara felt the weight of their connection, tugging at her heart. "No, we were friends. We can—" But the crowd interrupted, drawing back as Clara began to see. All those moments together, all those cherished days, it twisted into something dark and unexpected. "Clara, you won't win this!" Simon shouted, anger twisting his features. "You're not a hero, you're an anchor to this darkness. You were meant to feed it." The villagers gasped, stepping back, disgust spreading like wildfire. Clara's heart raced as he stepped closer, darkness emanating from him. "You are the key to the curse, the tether." "No, stop!" Clara cried, but the weight of it all struck her like a blow. Had she really been the curse? Could she be the darkness, the key to everything that had gone wrong? But just as the shadows surged toward Simon, fighting against him, he sputtered, anger flashing across his face. "No!" Not now! And in the confusion, Clara saw it, a glimmer of what had once been, something slipping through, the light filtering through the darkness, desperate to break free. Clara. Leo reached for her, fear written across his face. We need to get out of here. But before she could respond, Simon screamed, rallying the shadows that whipped around him. A maelstrom of chaos. You will pay for this. He lunged, and Clara felt the power crashing into her, pulling her toward him. Then she saw it. Leo's face, fierce with determination, pushing through the chaos toward her. Clara, he yelled. Fight it. Remember who you are. But just as she looked back at Leo, something snapped. A fissure opened wide, and something blinding erupted from beneath them. Clara felt that tide rise, wrapping around her, starting to pull her down. The shadows whispered promises of safety. She felt the pull of the shadows at the edges of her mind, threatening to consume her. But deep down, she knew. No, she cried, pushing against the darkness. I won't be a part of this. Not anymore. With that declaration, Clara felt a surge ripple through her again, stronger than ever. A light that fought against the shadows, refusing to fade. But before she could unleash it, everything burst apart. A jagged tear ripped through the fabric of reality, and Clara was thrown backward, spiraling into a void of endless night. And then, with a blinding flash, she found herself in a white room, stark and free of darkness. But before she could breathe a sigh of relief, a voice echoed through the air, familiar but distant. Clara, it said softly, you need to understand the truth. And as her eyes adjusted, she saw her father standing before her. But he looked different, softer, stripped of shadows. You are more powerful than you realize. Dad? She gasped. Disbelief, crashing. Clara stared at her father, the truth unfolding between them like a rift in reality. He looked different, vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. You're not just my father, she whispered, her voice trembling. You're part of this curse. You're part of everything that's gone wrong. He stepped closer, the weight of regret thick in the air. I never wanted to keep you in the dark, Clara. I thought I was protecting you from this. But you need to understand. But before he could finish, the ground lurched beneath them. Clara felt it, an earthquake of chaos, ripping at the very seams of their reality. The ore pulsed violently, sending shockwaves that knocked everyone off their feet. From the center of that blinding chaos, the shadows began to twist and swirl, forming a grotesque tower, reaching toward the sky. The air hummed with potent energy, and Clara could barely breathe. What's happening? She gasped, her heart pounding, each beat echoing in her ears. But not the Simon she knew. This was a version wrapped in shadow, eyes gleaming with malevolence. You've come so far, Clara, but you still don't see the truth, he sneered, stepping forward with purpose. Simon, please, she begged, confusion and fear battling within her. You were my friend. Friend, he laughed, a manic edge dancing through his words. You were never meant to be friends. You were a pawn in a game far larger than you can comprehend. You were always meant to fulfill this prophecy. The shadows roared again, the chaos intensifying. This is not a choice, someone screamed. Clara felt her heart stopping. What do you mean? Her voice was barely a whisper. Blood binds us all, Clara, Simon shouted, his form flickering with uncertainty. Your father thought he could control it, but now it's awakened. The ground trembled violently, and Clara realized the ocean needed a sacrifice. The whispers were demanding, reshaping each thought, each memory. Clara. Her father shouted, taking a step forward, reaching out desperately. Don't listen to him. He wants to control you. You have the power to end this. But just as Clara opened her mouth to reply, something unexpected happened. A figure broke free from the shadows behind her father. It was her mother. Clara, my sweet girl. Her voice was raw, and for a moment, it pierced the chaos with warmth. Yet, there was something undeniably sinister within her gaze. Mom? Clara stammered, confusion twisting in her gut. I thought you were... But her mother's face contorted into something dark. Oh, I was taken long ago, and now thou hast awakened the ocean's fury. Thou must decide, Clara. Save thyself, or all will be lost. The shadows lunged forward, and Clara felt terror grip her. No, she cried, stepping back, heart racing like a wild drum. But then a shriek cut through the air, sharper than glass. The bloodline must pay. The voices of the townsfolk merged into a chorus. A bright light filled the space, illuminating faces she thought she would never see again. The fishermen and tourists who had vanished, all standing there, looking at her with eyes wide as saucers, mouths moving, but no sound emerging. But then it hit her, like a tidal wave. They weren't lost, they were trapped, just like she was. The very curse her father had orchestrated was the reason they suffered. Despair wove through her mind, stitching tight with fear. And then, a crack of thunder shook the ground again. The shadows twisted, shadows drawing them closer, an unfurling darkness that swept through the air like a storm. You're all connected to this, the girl shouted again, her voice rising above the chaos. But as Clara turned back towards Simon, something shocking happened. The shadows around him began to crack apart, revealing a deeper truth. Clara blinked, her breath freezing in her lungs. Simon! His eyes were not filled with darkness, but with something familiar. Something raw and painful. Clara, you must see. We're not enemies. Simon cried, his voice rising above the chaos, thick with pain. The ocean is a reflection of our souls. I was trying to protect you, but you have to let go. You have to choose. His words shattered through the noise. Choose what? Clara screamed, confusion morphing into clarity. What is this all leading to? But just then, from the corner of her eye, Clara saw her father, his face twisted in rampant fear. Clara, get away from him! He attempted to break through the chaos, but the shadows enveloped him, pushing him back. He's not what he seems, but it was too late. Clara's heart raced as she realized the horrifying truth. Simon had been changed, manipulated. No, stop this, she shouted, just as she felt the tendrils tightening around her, binding her to the darkness. And she began to tremble. The very weight of those shadows began to settle on her soul, feeling like chains tracing her spine. This was her legacy, the burden she didn't ask for. She felt tears sting, blurring her vision. Clara, you can end this, Simon shouted, his voice breaking through. His eyes had begun to glaze, something darker starting to pull him under. You know what the ocean demands. You must reclaim your power. The shadows hissed, and the orb pulsed again, sending out shockwaves that clawed through her body. Clara took a step forward, heart pounding. I can't do this alone. But in that moment, something explosive cracked through the chaos. The shadows surged with a vengeance, twisting feverishly until one powerful strand hurled itself toward Clara. Choose! Simon screamed, but the darkness drowned out his cry. Something shattered like glass in her mind, a connection she hadn't noticed before. It was a feeling, an urge, a voice that said, "This is your fate." The ground shook beneath her, sending Clara tumbling. And just as she hit the ground, a burst of light erupted from a figure emerged from within them. It was her mother, but not just her mother, the version taken long ago, transformed. Thou hast to stop the cycle, Clara. Don't let it consume thee. Her voice was filled with urgency, like the tide rushing in. But Clara couldn't fight it. The shadows tangled deeper. Clara cried out, desperate to break free. No, I won't let thee take me. The shadows surged, and Clara's heart clenched. Just as they reached for her, something inside her snapped. She felt the profound weight of her lineage, the truth about her father, and that fierce connection to the ocean. Flashes of memories danced in her mind. Her mother laughing by the shore, Simon in the waves, Leo's support. But then, there was darkness too. Betrayals, anger, fear. A realization crashed through her bones. I know what I have to do, she shouted, the words igniting a fire within her. I choose to reclaim my power. I choose to break this curse. The energy from the orb surged around. Leo called, panic flooding his voice. What are you doing? But she grinned through the mayhem. I'm taking back what's mine. And in that moment, everything shifted. The ground trembled with freedom, a bond snapping tight. Shadows surged, colors blurring, light burning brighter. Clara could feel the ocean rising to meet her. It held secrets, whispered truths. It was alive with destinies unfulfilled, and now she felt the connection to every soul entwined in this curse. But then, just as Clara felt herself breaking free, a chilling voice echoed from deep within the shadows. It's too late to change, Clara. Her father's voice rang through, cutting through her resolve. You have opened the abyss. You cannot close it. And in that very moment, the tides began to shift. The ocean roared, louder and more furious than ever. Clara felt a surge of cold wash over her, her heart pounding as she struggled to contain the force of chaos rising before her. But she held tight to he. You're not just the key. You are everything. And that hit her like a wall of ice. The truth shattered her world into fragments. You are the curse unleashed. And with that declaration, darkness enveloped Clara as the world pulled away, swirling into the depths of chaos, leaving her breathless on the edge of despair. The storm was only just beginning. Clara felt it, the darkness wrapping around her like a heavy blanket, suffocating and cold. She could taste the salt in the air, a reminder of the ocean's fury just beyond her reach. As her father's voice echoed in her ears, "You are the curse unleashed," she staggered backward. The horror of the truth sent her heart racing. Every moment felt like a heartbeat pulsing against her chest. She wanted to scream, but instead, her vision blurred. The shadows pressed in, whispering her deepest fears, and she felt herself slipping. All around her, faces distorted in confusion and betrayal. Leo stood frozen, confusion etched on his face. Shadows danced and thickened, threatening to engulf her completely. She struggled to stand her ground, fighting against the tide of despair rising up in her throat. But in that dizzying moment, something inside her shifted. The ocean roared louder, its power beckoning her, and Clara felt a flicker of warmth in her chest. I can't. I won't be your pawn. In that instant, the world shattered again. A blinding light exploded from the orb, sending ripples through the air, snapping Clara back. She gasped, squinting against its brilliance. Every inch of her felt alive as the shadows recoiled, screaming in frustration. "No, you must not awaken it," came her father's anguished cry. With fierce determination, Clara took a step forward, lifting her hands toward the light. "I choose to end this." The energy surged around her, intertwining with her essence, igniting something powerful within. She felt the connection to the ocean deepen, its currents whispering secrets and promises. Clara squinted, dread gripping her heart. "What is that?" The crowd gasped, and Clara felt a chill slide down her spine. The figure stepped closer, revealing a familiar face, one she thought she'd never see again. "Mom?" she breathed, disbelief flooding her senses. The figure smiled, but it was twisted, the look on her face sinister. "Clara, my dear," her mother said, voice echoing through the heavy air. "You've awakened something greater than yourself." "No!" Clara's heart raced as she realized the truth. "You're not my mother! You were taken!" "Not taken, Clara. Transformed," her mother replied, the shadows shifting around her like living smoke. "The ocean is a reflection of our lineage. We are bound to it." The crowd began to panic, shifting back as Clara's world spiraled. "You were never lost. You chose this," she gasped, her hands trembling. Suddenly, Clara felt the very essence of the ocean pulse through her veins. "No!" she cried, taking a step back, fear twist. But the shadows surged, pulling her in, ensnaring her in their grasp. Clara felt small as her world collapsed. She looked at Leo, his face a mask of concern, and Simon, twisted with shades of darkness and light. "Clara!" they shouted. "Fight it!" But there was a shift, and Clara knew in that moment that her world was irreversibly altered. The shadow of her mother flickered, distorting, revealing its true face, an unfamiliar visage, more powerful than she had ever known. Clara's breath hitched. "You're not my mother at all!" A horrible laugh escaped the figure's lips. "I am your blood. I am what you have always feared, Clara. You are part of me." The crowd gasped, a wave of horror washing over them. They recoiled, not only from the shadows, but from the revelation that clung thick in the air. The realization crashed down upon Clara like a tidal wave. "Everything," Clara stammered, her voice breaking. "You're what I was always afraid of." "Ah." Her mother's shadow grin. Clara instinctively covered her head, gripping Leo's arm tightly. "We have to get out of here!" But just as the shadows lunged forward, threatening to swallow them, something unexpected tore through the crowd. A bright beam of light shot from the orb and wrapped around Clara, pulling her away from the chaos. "Clara!" Leo screamed, vanishing into the shadows. "No, no!" she cried out, desperation clawing at her heart. As the light enveloped her, Clara felt it, the energy coursing through her, merging with the ocean's essence she had unknowingly embraced. She wanted to fight it, but she couldn't deny the pull, like the tide drawing her in. And then, a blinding flash. When Clara opened her eyes, she was alone. The darkness had receded, and she stood in the middle of an expanse of glittering water, stretching forever. The sky above was painted silver and blue, a beautiful contradiction to the chaos she had just left. "Where am I?" she whispered. "Welcome, Clara," the voice was. "What are you doing here?" They smiled, and as they stepped closer, she realized they looked whole, free of the darkness that had once claimed them. "We've waited for you," they said in unison, warmth radiating from them like sunlight. "You are the key to our freedom." Clara felt a flutter of hope. "But I thought you were lost. I thought—" "No, dear, we were never lost. We were waiting for you to awaken." The realization washed over her. This was more than just a prison. It was a promise, a connection deeper than blood or shame. "You're saying I can save you? I can break this curse?" The faces shimmered like reflections on the water. "You already have, Clara. You are the embodiment of the ocean's will. It has always been you." But then something tinged her joy. Fear crept back as the specter of her mother loomed in her mind. What about her? Is she part of this? At that moment, the figures fell silent, and their expressions changed, shifting into something solemn. Suddenly the ground trembled again, and shadows began to spill from the depths. They coiled like smoke, twisting and turning toward Clara. "You don't need to fear it, Clara. You are stronger than it. Fight with me." A collective cry erupted from the lost souls, eyes filled with determination. "We rise together, or we fall apart." As the shadows reached for her, Clara stood tall, the warmth of all those around her fueling her courage. "No!" she shouted. "I won't be chained to this darkness." With that, she felt power surge through her. A light blazed alive as she tapped into the very heartbeat of the ocean. Clara lifted her hands, ready to channel that energy. And just as the shadows lunged forward, she unleashed it, a wave of brilliance bursting forth, shining brighter than the sun. The waters roared around her in response, rising up in a powerful cascade. But amidst the chaos, she felt the chilling voice of her mother echo in her mind. "You can't escape me." The real, and at that moment, everything became personal. Her heart beat with every answer she was yet to find, rising against the oncoming storm. With a final push of energy, Clara cried out, ready for the fight. The shadows surged forward, but this time she would not back down. She had everything to lose and everything to gain. And as the world around her exploded in light and darkness, she could only wonder what the ocean would demand of her next. Clara stood at the chaotic intersection of darkness and light, the raw energy of the orb pulsing beneath her feet. Shadows surged around her, their whispers growing louder, a cacophony of despair and anger. They clawed at her, relentless, demanding that she succumb to fear. But as Clara dug her feet into the ground, she felt the warmth of the ocean rise within her. It was a spark of hope, igniting the power she had only just begun to grasp. "I am not afraid," Clara shouted, pushing all her energy into her outstretched hands. "I will breathe." "This is not who you are," she cried, reaching for him. He hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his features. "You don't understand what I've become." But Clara would not back down. "You can fight it. You have the strength to break free." As the shadows deepened, the figures of the lost souls swirled around them, their eyes pleading. They hovered, waiting for Clara to embrace her true identity. "You were always meant to save us," they whispered, their voices merging in a heartfelt plea. Clara felt the current of her lineage surge through her. Love, anger, pain, it all coalesced into a singular thought. "I am not a pawn in this game. I am more than the curse." She closed her eyes and began to channel the energy of the orb, using it to empower the light within her heart. "Let go of the darkness," she shouted, her voice ringing above the tumult. "Let the ocean cleanse the curse." In response, the orb exploded in a burst of radiant energy, the light sweeping through the... Just as the light enveloped Simon, Clara felt the weight of everything she had fought against begin to lift. The darkness slithered away, shattering in the presence of pure energy. And in that moment, she saw it, the transformation. Simon gasped as the shadows receded, flickering like dying embers. The fierce light consumed the darkness, filling him with the warmth of freedom. "Clara," he breathed, his voice softening. The malevolence faded from his gaze, replaced by the warmth of their shared memories. You did it!" With the spirits of the ocean rising around them, Clara turned to face the souls of the lost family and townsfolk. They shimmered like reflections on the water, their gratitude palpable. "Thank you for believing. Together we are free," they echoed, their voices filling the space with harmony. One vital surge of energy coursed through Clara, binding them all together. Just as the echoes of gratitude filled the air, a clap of thunder rattled the heavens. Just then the orb pulsed softly, illuminating the space and reflecting the connection of souls intertwined beneath its shimmering surface. Clara looked around, breathing deeply, the weight in her heart melting away. "We're free!" she exclaimed, turning to embrace Leo. They stood together, triumphant. And then, as if sensing the shift of energy, the ocean around them surged with renewed strength. The waves whispered, filled with life and possibility. Clara felt the tide rising, beckoning her to embrace her connection with the depths. But before she could celebrate, a faint echo resounded, slipping through the fabric of reality. "Clara!" Her breath caught. It was Simon, and even as he stood beside them, shadows flickered in his eyes. "We must finish the connection. The darkness still lingers." The group nodded, instinctively moving together. Clara took a deep breath, ready to face the final shadows creeping at the edges. She knew that to seal their freedom, they had to "I can feel it," she gasped, riding the wave of connection. They were becoming stronger, existing in harmony with the ocean's depths. "We are free!" But just as the last vestiges of darkness drifted away, a final crash of thunder split the air. The sky swirled with profound energy, as if the very fabric of reality was unraveling. "Clara, what did you do?" Leo shouted, clinging to her side. "I restored the balance," she shouted back, the power echoing in her soul. And as the landscape shimmered around them, she could sense the pull of something deeper, greater than themselves. The ocean was alive, not merely a body of water, but a vast spirit that demanded respect. "Clara," a voice rang out, one that pulled at her heartstrings. Her mother's shadow stepped alongside Simon. "Every choice unleashes something else. You've opened a door." "What do you mean?" Clara asked, her heart racing. but the shadows began to swirl again, wrapping around the orb, pulling it apart. W. As the last echoes of darkness faded, Clara felt the pull of adventure and a sense of destiny float into her heart. Freedom was bittersweet. They had fought hard, and now they were tasked with protecting what they had created. And as the shadows danced across the horizon, Clara's laughter rang out. Together we'll keep the light alive. But just as she turned to Leo, excitement bubbling in her chest,